Hey everybody, I have a very, very special guest on the show here today. Dan Cohen is a journalist for the Real News Network, and he has decided to join us today. Dan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Great to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, so now you recently covered a Trump rally in Arizona. I was able to cover it on my show as well, your reporting. And what I want to do first is I want to show everybody an example of your work, and then we can talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Well, first, here's that video.
On March 4th, supporters of President Donald Trump gathered in Phoenix, Arizona at the state capitol as part of a nationwide march for Trump.
And I heard, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. And we still need to pursue that.
Throughout his rise to the White House, Trump capitalized on fear and hatred of Muslims and Mexicans, promising to enact draconian measures against them.
Total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Perhaps nowhere is that xenophobia more pronounced than Maricopa County, Arizona, where Trump won more votes than any other county in the country.
It's America. We don't want Sharia law. It's a Christian country.
If you don't like it here, go to Syria, go to someplace else.
The March for Trump drew Phoenix area locals, heavily armed militiamen, and white nationalists outspoken on preserving their narrow vision of American culture.
So that's a sample of some of the work that you did. And by the way, it was excellent reporting. And so basically, you were there in Maricopa County, right? You were in the belly of the beast, what I like to call it. I want to ask you what it was like to be there, especially knowing how members of the media have been treated by Donald Trump and his supporters. I mean, what was it like?
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually grew up in Phoenix, so that's home
Okay.
sweet home for me. But I mean, I can't say I was terribly surprised. This is kind of the underbelly of the movement that we've seen grow together. This uniquely American phenomenon through the Trump era. I've actually been reporting in Israel, Palestine for the last 3 years. I've been based there, and that's involved covering a lot of hard right fascist mobs. So
Wow.
It was pretty comfortable terrain for me. But nonetheless, being among heavily armed people who are, very outspoken about their beliefs is not exactly a comfortable environment.
Right.
But I just figure as long as I have my camera on them, then I'm all right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, were you at all concerned for your safety? I mean, before knowing that you were, doing covering Israel Palestine, I thought maybe you would be concerned for your safety there, but I can see that you probably went through worse.
Well, I mean, I will say one thing that's different about, from Israel is that these people in Phoenix were heavily armed. So that's
Right.
definitely intimidating.
Right.
You have heavily armed militiamen, some of whom I tried to talk to, but they won't even tell you if they're actually law enforcement.
Wow.
I knew they're not. So you have heavily armed militiamen who won't even answer a basic question, who have bigger guns than the police, and that is kind of terrifying on a bigger scale. But I can't say I felt like I was really in danger at the event. I mean, frankly, these people, they won. Trump won. So now they have a public space. They're kind of within the system more than pushed
Right.
out to the margins where they were.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting seeing these different Trump rallies and seeing the reaction of people who supported Trump and how they treat other people. I always kind of classified them as sore winners. Maybe you noticed that. It's just, they've won, and yet at the same time, they're like, no, you must bow down to Trump. You must give him lots and lots of respect. How dare you talk bad about him? How dare you, try to resist him as some of the Democrats have been doing? And it's you probably noticed that during your coverage, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, there's no real winning with them. And I think the phenomenon that you're describing, I would call fascism. And I think that's really the conversation that we need to be having in this country. Instead of kind of squabbling over, is it okay to punch a Nazi?
Right.
Are we better than them? And also moving on from the Russia-phobia that
Yes.
that we've seen liberals embrace. It's kind of like their own conspiracy theory of a communist takeover. So, I mean, I think it's time that we really take a hard look at how we got here and how we're going to organize to fight this movement.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, like there are some issues obviously with Russia, and I do think that they did some propaganda, certainly in favor or at least against Hillary Clinton. But you're right. We do have this big thing in the Democratic Party where all we're focusing on is Russia, 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 when there are, as you said, some serious issues going on in America, and with the hard right, being in power and doing the things that they're doing right now. Things like going after free speech and doing these rallies where people are openly talking about deporting Jewish people and exterminating liberals. And I think that was the one thing that I think disturbed me the most, is how quickly they go to, let's wipe them out, let's wipe them out, let's wipe them out, wipe out the liberals. They're the enemies of of America. They're the enemies of us. And it's like, no, we're fellow Americans. We all believe in, some of the same things, but don't we have different ways of getting there? But I think when you're dealing with people that are so far deep in their paranoia and their hatred of other people, you find that there's not a lot of common ground. And that's scary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing, hard right white nationalist culture emerge. So, where there is, frankly, I wasn't terribly surprised by that kid's comment about, that Jewish woman should go back to her country. Where there's Islamophobia, there's anti-Semitism. All these kinds of racism coming out together. So, it's disturbing and shocking, but not exactly surprising.
Yeah, it's like once you open up that box of hatred, I mean, against, as you said, Muslims and African Americans, you're going to have that anti-Semitism come out as well. And so, I mean, that goes along with the territory of when you're dealing with people that are white nationalists. And you're right, we don't spend enough time talking about the implications of this and of where this came from and how exactly are we going to fight it. And I guess that's my next question is how do you think we can fight this?
Well, first of all, I think we need to just face what we're up against. And for liberals, we need to talk about how we failed. First of all, how did this happen? How did Donald Trump get to the White House? How did we empower these people? And a lot of that, I think, is first admitting that the failure, the Democratic Party has left its base, is not appealing to its base anymore. And we've seen that on a number of issues. And that's why a lot of people there are a number of people who voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012 voted for Trump. There are a number of people who, how is the Democratic Party able to appeal to common people, to the working class? And that's really about getting back in touch and abandoning this kind of two-party system.
Yeah, something that I've noticed with the Democrats is that they have continued to not learn their lesson after this embarrassing, this disastrous loss to Donald Trump. And you're right, they've lost the working class. Not just let's not talk about just working class whites, because the working class is the working class, right? And they've lost a lot of these people because they no longer represent them. Because right now, at least from what I can see, is that they enjoy taking big corporate money way too much. I mean, look, the Republican Party, we have no doubts that they're 100% corporate funded and bought. The Democratic Party, though, right now, through some successful ninja whatever abilities of the Republican Party to go through and do this messaging where no, we're the party of the people and they're the party of the elites, when it's the kind of the opposite. Or at least it used to be the opposite. Now the Democratic Party is like, yeah, we kind of are party of elite. We still look out for you a little bit more when it comes to policies, because their policies are better than the Republicans. But at the same time, they don't have that messaging. They keep losing, and they keep taking this corporate money and doing these corporate policies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this was, Trump voters embraced the deplorable label, and
Right.
that's exactly the problem with the Democratic Party and alienating, working people. So I think really until we see now the Democratic Party went with Tom Perez instead
Yeah.
of Keith Ellison, who we see is just the same problem repeated over and over. So it's hard to have hope in the Democratic establishment at this point.
Again, you're absolutely right. The Democratic establishment has absolutely failed us. And they continue to double down on the same neoliberal type of economic policies. You don't see them out there fighting for minimum wage. You don't see them fighting to fix healthcare. And one of the things that I was always frustrated about when I was talking about the ACA and talking about the Democrats and talking about how Hillary Clinton herself campaigned, ACA, it's fine. It's Obamacare is great. It's working for everybody. No, it actually isn't. It has significant issues. While, it is a good piece of legislation to start from, it is a good starting point for getting something that is more comprehensive, that is better, that actually does control things like premium increases. Instead, the Democrats, Hillary Clinton is going to label this as, no, it's complete. Our job is done. We're going to wash our hands of it. That's it. But no, there are millions of Americans out there that are saying that this is not a good piece of legislation, that it does need to be fixed. We don't want to get rid of it. And I've covered numerous polls that have talked about this, and more Americans wanted to fix it, wanted to add to it, than to repeal and replace. And the Democrats, unfortunately, with their terrible messaging, did not get that across. They didn't say, we're going to come out and we're going to fix it, we're going to make it better. No, it's perfect as it is. And by the way, Donald Trump's a bad man. He's a racist, which he is. He is a racist. He is a misogynist. But you don't run a campaign on that because you're going to lose. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
Disaster.
exactly. I mean, we're in a bad place, and if we don't take a look in the mirror as a country, things are going to get worse. I mean, what are we looking at now? Cuomo versus Trump 2020?
Oh, God, no.
And, that's a pretty terrifying thought. What comes after Trump, So I think it's time to look in the mirror. And that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Absolutely. Now, since we're talking about this, I do want to talk about some of the reports of where, some people are saying that Bernie Sanders is now the ideological head of the party. I don't think that that's necessarily true, because if it was, I'd be celebrating. And I think there would be a lot of people celebrating. But they're saying that, I'm seeing this around, and I'm seeing so much resistance from establishment Democrats. And that bothers me because, again, if you don't adapt a Bernie Sanders style, progressive platform, then you're going to continue to lose to people like Trump, to the most, I'm going to say it, deplorable people that you can put. Steve Bannon and Mike Pence and Donald Trump. People like that are going to continue to win.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why, that's Trump and Bernie were both able to tap into kind of an anti-establishment feeling, speaking to real people's needs to some degree, which the Democratic Party didn't do, which Hillary Clinton didn't do. And at the same time, I mean, one of the things that really struck me about that mob was just kind of people's understanding of events unfolding around them in terms of, people talked about Muslims, refugees, and Mexicans, and kind of use them interchangeably. Muslims and refugees are used interchangeably.
Right.
And there's just been so much propaganda about our neoliberal trade policies with Mexico and Central America. And there's nobody has any understanding that people are fleeing violence in these countries and coming to this country where we've used neoliberal trade policies to extract wealth. And so people are fleeing for their lives. That's why we have basically, a refugee crisis on our southern border and beyond. And the same with Muslims and refugees. Right. Why are people fleeing to the U.S., North America, and Europe? It's because of regime change wars and destabilizing countries across, the Middle East and beyond. And so,
Absolutely.
we just need to look at this stuff. Take a hard look.
Absolutely. I mean, and demagoguery, which is unfortunately one of the vehicles Donald Trump used to get elected, is not going to solve the issue. We're not going to solve the issue by building a giant fucking wall, which is easily, by the way, you can easily bypass this wall. There are tunnels and planes. You can go over that wall. You're not going to solve that problem by building walls. You're not going to solve the problem by bombing the Middle East more. And you're not going to solve the problem by demagoguing people who are literally running from ISIS. And so you're absolutely right. We need to look inward as a country, and the Democratic Party also needs to look inward on itself in order to fix these issues, and to try to touch on what Donald Trump had successfully been able to touch on with a lot of people. Now, something that struck me last night, there was that town hall with Bernie Sanders. I don't know if you're aware of that, in West Virginia, McDowell County, talking to Donald Trump supporters. It was on MSNBC, one of the corporate media outlets that, for the most part, is terrible. But when they do these town halls with Bernie Sanders, which, by the way, they should have done these during the primary a lot more. My point is, they talk to Trump supporters, and you realize that some of these economic concerns that the Democrats didn't talk about were on these people's minds when they voted for Donald Trump. And unfortunately, there's a large base, or a large part of the Democratic Party that doesn't see that. All they see is, they must be all racist, they must be all sexist. Certainly there is a part of that. There is certainly a big chunk of the Donald Trump support that is racist, sexist, and white nationalists. But there are also these people that I like to call brick throwers. They throw the brick through the establishment's window because nobody listened to them before. They were left behind by these neoliberal economic policies. And they're crying out for help, and they want someone to listen to them. And Bernie Sanders is the only Democrat that actually did listen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't catch that program. It sounds like a worthy watch.
Yeah.
But in the conversations I had with these Trump voters, Trump supporters, I mean, some of them could make a coherent argument about their concerns. Absolutely. It's just they don't really, maybe have all of the information. And what's happened is, as you see in the video, you have politicians going up there inciting them, saying, they're coming for this and that. They're going to take what's yours. Meanwhile, these same politicians are in bed with corporations that want to build that wall.
Right.
Huge amounts of spending, among other things. So it's really it's a scam. I mean, these are cons that people are falling for, and it does no good to just dismiss the entire, all Trump voters as racist, sexist, and just beyond the pale. Right.
And so, that kind of brings me to an interesting question, the whole, fake news kind of angle, but talking about more of the news bubble on the conservative right, the far right, where you have, Breitbart and InfoWars and other conservative outlets essentially building what we consider to be an alternate reality. And I think that really does feed into it. What you're saying, these people not being properly informed by news outlets and their politicians in order to, drive an ideological agenda that's ultimately going to, fill somebody's pockets. And I think that's one of the major problems that we have, is just the abundance of fake. There was even I covered a conservative radio host that essentially admitted, for the last 20, 30 years, we said, don't trust regular media. Don't trust the media. Don't trust anybody except for us, because we're the only ones giving you the truth. And I have my issues with corporate media. I'm sure you do as well. But some of what they do is actual good stuff. And where they fail, I believe that we fill in the gap, people who are part of new media.
Yeah, I think it's more important than ever, frankly, to support independent media.
Yep.
I mean, if I look at other journalists who were on the ground there, other media outlets, there were a handful. Nobody reported on the ugliest stuff that came out of that rally except me, and my video went viral. So why are we not talking about? Why is it up to independent journalists, to small-time journalists to come to bring this stuff up, to spark these conversations? And I think, to be honest, many popular media figures have actually benefited from the Trump phenomenon, where they've been able to portray themselves as the resistance. I mean, Jake Tapper is one who, there have been numerous articles written about him, lauding him as some kind of resistance journalist hero. And he just had lunch with Trump last week. And of course,
wow.
He's not. I mean, why isn't CNN on the ground talking to these Trump supporters about their real concerns and showing how these politicians are inciting against them? It's real. And so absolutely, I think independent media like ourselves has to come in and really show what's happening.
Right. Well, you said, there's a huge financial incentive. And, let's give an example. Morning Joe is a perfect example, I think, of that. Now there's huge, anti-Trump. They're always going after Donald Trump. But they weren't going after them when they were doing nice little town halls where they were, speaking so nicely to each other off camera. So it becomes a show. It becomes a show for ratings. And that's really one of the huge failures, I think, with corporate media, is that since they are a business, since they are a corporation, they're going to do whatever they can do to continue to get those ratings. And that's the other issue that we have with other politicians, even ones that aren't as noxious as Trump. It's really good. It's really easy and good for them to be able to get that access with those politicians instead of actually being able to tell the truth. You end up getting this massive false equivalence, I think, when you have the Democrat versus Republican debates, and they don't actually come in and say, well, actually, that's not true, what you're saying over here. That's actually false, and here's why. Here are the numbers. Here are the facts. They don't do that enough. And that's been one of the main problems, and I think has really fed into this this issue that we have with people being uninformed and misinformed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like we're living in separate realities here, depending on kind of which narrative you subscribe to. And it's true that it's about ratings. I mean, before Trump was elected, he'd say any kind of, any heinous thing, and he'd get, he got billions of dollars worth of free.
$2 billion.
Yeah, exactly. So of free airtime from the same outlets that are claiming to be against him now.
Yeah.
So it's a fraud.
The empty podium, I think, was the thing that frustrated me the most. Bernie Sanders would be giving like a barn burner speech, or somebody else would be giving a speech, and they would show an empty podium of Trump for about a half hour. That's so frustrating. And as somebody who cares about facts and news, I look at that and I'm like, why? And I never came up with an answer.
Yeah, I mean, Bernie just doesn't, get the ratings. They're forced to cover him to some degree, begrudgingly. But I mean, the Democratic establishment obviously did not want Bernie. They basically, selected Hillary over Bernie. And it's the same phenomenon in popular media.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because Bernie Sanders was the only one actually going out there and talking about issues and policy.
Yeah, he's the one who was appealing to real people and bringing them out. I mean, it's sad that he wasn't a Democratic selection. I mean, it's still somewhat surreal that Donald Trump is the president and we were so close to having Bernie. I mean, I don't know when I'll get used to that.
It's hard to say. It really is. I've gotten past the stage of where I wake up and I'm like, President Trump. Fuck. You have to say it a couple of times. You're like, wait, no, that's real. That's real. This happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially, as you said, we could have had Bernie Sanders, and the Democratic Party, shut that down. And again, that's exactly looping back around to your coverage in Arizona. That's how we got here. That's how we got to this point.
Yeah. I mean, also, the other thing is there were about 300 people at that Trump rally. I mean, Phoenix is a large city. I can't remember how many how many millions, but 5 million, maybe 5 million people, 300 people to come out is not massive. I mean, there are a lot of Trump supporters in Phoenix, but it's not like, those are mostly the really kind of rabid ones.
Yeah.
By and large, it's also, I think it's important to point out, there are a lot of people who'd stay home and wouldn't come out for something like that, who do find it kind of maybe off-putting or
Right.
just not that engaged, who voted
Right.
for Trump. And those are the people more that, we need to speak to, not, the neo-Nazis and white nationalists and these kind of people.
Yeah, the brick throwers.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the people that we can get to. The Democratic Party, though, at this point has lost a lot of credibility. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that are even going to consider the notion of voting for a Democrat. I know quite a few people who watch my show that are just like, no, under no circumstances will I vote for a Democrat. I'll go, independent, won't vote for Trump either. There's got to be another option. And that's a disaster for the Democratic Party. Do you see the recent poll out today it was this week by Suffolk, where the Democratic Party is less popular than Donald Trump? That's a disaster.
Yeah, I didn't see that poll. That is a total disaster.
Total disaster.
I mean, it says everything about the Democratic Party's failure to, appeal to working class people. I mean, that's what's going on here. Exactly.
Yeah, it's so. Again, this is, how we got here, and now we got to get ourselves out of it. And there needs to be just some major discussions happening. Those discussions are not going to happen on CNN or MSNBC. These discussions are going to happen in new media and in independent media like our organizations, TYT Network and TYT Nation, The Real News, and all that. That's really the future of media. And I'm not just saying it because I'm in the media, but I'm saying it's because, we actually are willing to have these conversations. You're willing to go out and talk to Trump supporters. And even though you'll see the ugly side, you also will see the side of people that we're just looking for change, that we're looking for something different than the establishment and establishment politics. And again, those are the conversations that we need to have and stuff we need to look at.
Yeah, well, I think it's, it's apparent to a lot of people that our two-party system is not working, and we need to have alternatives. And part of that is alternative media, independent media, who's willing to go and show what's happening on the ground and, put real people's faces on the camera, even if it's, distasteful or a little bit ugly. And the organizing, I think, happens kind of at, it's a bottom up type thing. And that's where I think people need to direct their energies into getting engaged locally in their communities and their cities. I think that's really the way that we're gonna, get out of this cycle of insanity.
Yeah, all politics is local, that's for sure. So one question here: have you heard of Justice Democrats?
I haven't.
Okay, what they're basically what it is that it's a group that wants to primary all corporate Democrats. So they take real people, regular people, and they train them, and they help fund their campaigns, where they take zero corporate money and they go to primary any kind of corporate Democrat to try and do a takeover of the Democratic Party. So if you haven't, you might look into them, because that's something that I think is a valid approach, as well as building a party from the outside. It's like an inside in and outside strategy of doing both, because you're right, something has to change. We have to do something different than the two-party structure, because right now neither of them are representing, I think, a majority of Americans. I mean, you go down issue by issue, poll by poll, Americans are far more progressive when it comes to policy. There's a reason that Medicare and Social Security are, even among Republicans, incredibly popular. These are progressive priorities, and there's a reason that Republicans always come out and say, "Oh, don't worry, I'm going to protect Medicare. I'm going to protect Social Security." When of course they want to cut it, they want to decimate it so they can put money in the pockets of their donors.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I'll check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you have any more suggestions on how to do that as well?
On how to build, kind of build a new party.
Yeah, how to do something different. Where to go? Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, for me, it's like the first thing is, I mean, like I said before, is to
Right.
just kind of, really look at how we where did we go wrong?
Yeah.
And, I mean, in terms of the Russia stuff, I can't say that nothing happened, but we haven't seen any evidence that, Putin hacked the election and any of this
Right.
stuff. So it's like I think what it's really about is the Democratic establishment basically coping with its failure. And liberals, buying into it is
Right.
I mean, it's just a perfect recipe for Trump 2020.
Yeah.
And so, for me, the first thing is just really taking a hard look in the mirror and looking at where we're at.
Absolutely. And again, with the Russia stuff, it's this, they focus way too much on it. They're hyper-focused. Yeah, I believe there should be some investigation so we can actually get some evidence. But it is a way to distract from the failures of the Democratic Party. So I'm in agreement with you there. All right.
I mean, I'll say if you watch the video and you come away thinking that is not a uniquely American phenomenon, that's Russia, then I think we missed the point.
Right.
About how we've gotten to this point, and that's where we need to be focusing our energies.
Absolutely. All right, Dan Cohen, Real News Network. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it a lot. Everybody, check out his reporting at the Real News Network, and make sure to follow him on Twitter at Dan Cohen 3000. That's COHEN. Thank you so much, man. I hope we can have you on the show again.
Definitely. Thanks a lot for having me, Jeff.
All right, I appreciate it, man. You have a good one.
All right, you too.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYT Nation.